Welcome back. As we continue our unit on the Civil War today, we are going to be looking at some of the decisions of lawmakers and judges in Virginia and across the country, which would lead us into the Civil War. Take a moment to look over the learning targets. I can describe how state governments in the South worked to maintain slavery. In the wake of Nat Turner's infamous rebellion, many white Virginians worried for their safety. They realized for the first time that if given the chance, their slaves could kill them. As a result, they wanted to make laws stricter and make it more difficult for slaves to communicate or gather. However, when the Virginia General Assembly met in 1832, there was a small group of delegates from the western counties of the state that wanted to phase out slavery. Their plan involved a 30-year timetable for slowly getting rid of the practice. The larger group prevailed, however, and they didn't even consider the plan. But this meeting showed that Virginia was truly divided over the issue of slavery. On a national level, Southern states were fighting hard to keep their slaves, as abolitionists and the Underground Railroad worked just as hard to get them to freedom. They believed that if they could just get to the North or out of the country, they would be free. But even though northern states were working to end slavery in their area, lawmakers weren't yet ready to make a national push for the abolition of slavery. For this reason, they made many compromises. One of those compromises was the Fugitive Slave Act, passed in 1850. This was a federal law, which meant that every state had to abide by it, and it required Northerners to help capture runaway slaves to return them to their owners. This did not go over well for many in the North, who felt that this was a huge overreach by the government to force them to help maintain slavery. As a result, several northern states passed their own laws protecting runaway slaves as a way of fighting back. At this point, there was no denying that trouble was brewing between the two sides. Another compromise came when arguments arose regarding what the federal government should do about new states joining the Union. Keep in mind that the United States didn't have 50 states in the 1800s. If you take a look at this map, you can see the states that we know today, and you can see all of the territories out to the west that have not become states yet. During this turmoil, there were many territories which were developing their own local governments and petitioning to join the U.S. During sessions of Congress, current states argued over whether new states should be allowed to include the practice of slavery in their state constitutions. Obviously, northern states wanted all new states to be free, and southern states wanted all new states to allow slavery. Both sides couldn't win, and they couldn't come to an agreement, so the Missouri Compromise was born. A line was drawn across the United States territory, and any state north of the line would be a free state, and any state joining to the south of the line would be a slave state. Finally, we're going to look at a Supreme Court decision which was a tipping point for many Americans, and ultimately was a contributing factor to the start of the Civil War. Dred Scott was a slave in Missouri, which was a slave state. However, his owners took him to temporarily live in Illinois and the Wisconsin Territory, which were both free areas. When his owners brought him back to Missouri, he sued, arguing that because he was brought into free territory for an extended period of time, he had been freed. Both the Missouri and U.S. federal courts determined that he was still a slave under Missouri law. However, it was the U.S. Supreme Court which took it one step further. In a 7-2 decision, the Supreme Court stated that the United States Constitution did not even apply to Black people, whether they were free or enslaved, and that Dred Scott did not have the right to sue in court. According to them, he was property and could never be a citizen. People across the North were enraged by this decision, as it essentially stated that only white people were natural citizens. In our next video, we will finally look at the start of the Civil War and its major battles. Take a moment to reflect on the following questions and rewatch as necessary. What did eastern and western counties of Virginia disagree on? What was the purpose of the Fugitive Slave Act? And why was the Dred Scott decision important? Have a great day.